Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Good evening. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to talk about whatever we want to talk about. Today's topic is Black resilience. Black resilience. And my special guest is Dr. Keino Miller, who is no stranger to Conversations with Nicole. So he has agreed to so graciously join us again and talk around this very important topic. But before I bring him on and we get this party started, we want to hear from you. We are live on Conversations with Nicole Facebook page, YouTube channel, and on the Greater Works Network on Roku TV. So on YouTube and on Facebook, I'd like you to enter your city and state in the comments so that we can give you a shout out. This is an interactive live, which means that we fully expect to hear from you. This is a safe space for us to engage with one another and share. And so we are all about highlighting mental health, especially in Black and Brown communities, and encouraging folks to get their check up from the neck up and connect with a counselor or therapist today. So I see you, Miss Tracy Adams Golay in Tallahassee, Florida. Thank you for being here and supporting us like you do. Hey there, cousin Raymond in Newport News, Virginia. Miss Sunshine Gwen in Quincy. Thank you for being here. Miss Lynette, thank you for being here. Lynette texted me today and was like, "Ooh, I'm so excited. I can't wait till the topic tonight." So Dr. Miller, just know they're ready for you tonight. They are ready for you. So hopefully you all have had a fantastic day. It's been a great one for me. It is unseasonably warm in Tallahassee for December, but I'm not complaining. I'm enjoying it. But at any rate, we are going to get started in just a moment. I see you, Vault, in New Orleans. Thank you for being here, Nola in the house. So I am going to read some of my guest bio for those of you who may not know him or need to get acquainted with him. Dr. Keino Miller earned his doctorate in counseling psychology from Indiana University, Bloomington, with a specialization in sports and performance psychology. He is licensed to practice both in Louisiana and Florida and has acquired over 10 years of experience serving athletes. In fact, when he came on before, he talked about Black athletes, and it was a great discussion. So he has addressed a variety of concerns um, with individuals and families, to include depression, anxiety, motivation, trauma, relationship issues, identity development, career changes, and performance issues. His background includes a sports psychology fellowship at NC State University, an internship with the Psychological Resource Office of OU student athletes at the University of Oklahoma. Y'all help me welcome Dr. Keino Miller.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Nicole. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, beautiful.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to today's show. So thank you all for having me. Look forward to engaging with the guests and just having a really great, broad conversation. So I'm looking
Nice,
forward to it.
nice. So before we get started, I want you to tell the folks at home who may not be familiar with you. I read a little bit of what you do and a little bit of your educational background, but tell us who you are. Who is Dr. Keino Miller?
Always a great question. Well, what I will tell you is psychologist by trade, but in the faith that I work with and how I've been raised and trained as a psychologist. Tonight, I will present myself as a warrior healer, and so that is the theme for the night. It's firmly invested in the emancipation of African people and those of African descent, particularly those descendants of enslaved Africans here in these United States. And we're really thinking about psychological emancipation. So that's the vibe that I'm on tonight, and that's the anchor that I want to present this evening.
All right, love it. Warrior, healer, and psychological emancipation. Yes. All right, good deal. Now, I know we're going to talk about Black resilience, but
Mhm.
because I have a licensed professional on, and I don't want you all to confuse our conversation for therapy or counseling. I have a disclaimer which states that all topics, past, present, and future, on Conversations with Nicole are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or an answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. All right. So, Lynette, she said, I'm anchored warrior healer. Love it. Anchored warrior healer. All right. So let's get started with what Black resilience means to you. And you may want to, segue with your presentation, but I would love to hear kind of in your own words what that means to you.
Yeah. I mean, without the presentation, I mean, the reality is this is a reclamation of who we are in terms of our consciousness. And so what I've always thought about it in terms of the resurrection of the African spirit and mind, really being able to understand who we were and how we reclaim those parts which were lost. And so when we think about blackness is conscientious. It is how we exude um, the words that we use and the connections that we have, which is sometimes unspoken, right? And so when we connect that with our resilience and our ability to overcome and continue to achieve and thrive and innovate, these things become apparent. So what I mean by this simply is you have to dig within in order to move mountains or move and elevate yourself to a higher degree. So our salvation, if we want to use that terminology frame of thought, is within. And so that's how I would begin you know that discussion,
Okay.
and we'll see what happens later on.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I mean, we can go ahead and transition to the um, PowerPoint. But while we're doing that, if you all would, if you don't mind, for our viewers, tell us what you give us maybe one or two words when you hear the term Black resilience. What do you think of? One or two words. When you hear the words Black resilience, what do you think of? All right. So let me go. We're gonna do a screen share.
I look forward to those comments.
Yes. All right. Hold on. Hold on. Me and my technology. Y'all
No,
just
that's
be
good.
with me. All
And so,
right.
Nicole, you'll have the ability to push those slides through.
I'm going to.
Right.
That's
And
what I'm
it's not a
going.
long presentation. It's just something that I think ultimately a picture's worth 1,000 words. So
Yes. Okay. Shucks, that is not what I meant to do. Okay, hold on. Let me try.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. This
All
is why
right.
I need a PA. This is exactly why. All right, let me try here and here. Are we there?
Not quite.
Oh, shucks. Okay.
You
Oh,
had it earlier. But again, if it's going to slow the show, then I'll push through it, and we'll just I'll share it with you later, and you can share it with the family.
okay, wait, hold on. Let me just
Okay.
give you one more go. Hold on. Stop sharing.
Okay.
Go back.
Black folk
All
development.
right. So I see your comments. My mom said endurance. We got Dr. Parks on. He said black resilience, the ability of black folks to bounce back
Yeah.
from trauma.
Yeah.
That's a good one, Dr. Parks.
Go.
Endurance is good too, my thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me try one more again, y'all. Just bear with me.
That's what I
Hmm.
say. I heard that. The sound. Sir.
Yeah. Let's see. What's it looking like?
Yeah, looking good right there.
Okay. All right. So you just talk me through it. Go
All
ahead.
right. You can go ahead and hit the next slide there. So this is just the intro of what we want to kind of give as a definition. So in this particular slide here, I am offering my definition of black or blackness. Mindset grounded in the conscientious, right? Attainment of elevated blackness in every expression of identity. So that's how I would begin to think about blackness in terms of how it moves and how it feels. And then I borrowed resilience from the APA, American Psychological Association here. So the process and outcomes of successful adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. So someone said resiliency, discernment. I think it speaks to that. So next slide, please.
Okay.
So Black resilience and the framework. And so if you can just push through it, Nicole, as best you can there. So these things I want to kind of draw your attention to in terms of our psycho-emotional, our intellectual, aspirational, social, physical, cultural, and spiritual well-beings, right? So when we think about what has been coined deep thought, or path to emancipation. Bob Marley talked about this in a song, and so it's really interesting. We'll come back to where this quote came from, but if you remember, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our mind. So,
Yes, you got to sing it.
right, exactly.
Sing it.
So, where did that quote come from? If anyone in the chat can,
Ooh,
give us that
Bob,
wisdom,
Bob Marley.
or share that now. Bob pulled it from somewhere else. So I'll leave that out there for the folks to really look at. So when I begin to understand and think about Black resilience, and I think you got one more slide. I mean, one more.
Okay.
Click. I think you got one more click. There you go. No, go back one more.
Oh.
I begin by asking the people I'm working with, what are you reading? And so that's the first question I'm asking. What are you reading? What are you pouring into your mind, right, and your soul and your spirit? And then how do you feel? How do you feel and on a daily basis? Are you up typically? Do you feel light? Do you feel heavy? And this is a self-assessment, but the point I'm making is this is when you're thinking about understanding your thoughts, it begins with that level of self-assessment. We'll continue with that. How do you feed your soul? So that's something unto itself, right? What do you want out of life? And really thinking about those values and things that are really, really concrete. And more importantly, where you put your money and how does it acknowledge or validate your lived experience? Now that one we may have to talk about a little bit later in the show, but those are the questions I really begin to think about. And I end with simply, what is your relationship like with your ancestors? And more importantly, how do you celebrate them? And so during this time of year, we think about, a lot of people think about joy and happiness, right? But I work with people who this is not an easy time of year.
Yeah.
We go through Memorial Day, we go through Mother's Day, we go through Father's Day, and the world is celebrating, commemorating. But You think about some of these days, holidays, Thanksgiving, think about those who parents have gone on or their loved ones have gone on, for those who have children who have gone on and moved on, they've transitioned to the other side. It's not so joyous. So how do we continue to celebrate those memories? That is in line with Black resilience. How we continue to be here in spite of life's challenges. Next slide for me, Nicole, please.
Okay.
And so this part, one more tap. This part begins with self-awareness. So again, understanding who you are, how you got here, how you're connected, and just recognizing that you have to go within. We talked about this in the previous slide, but if we really understand how resilience begins, it is self-awareness. Being able to do that, physician heal thyself type of philosophy, really being able to reveal and pull back the layers and understanding who you are and how you come into the world and how you present in the world, what makes you unique, what makes you valuable, what makes you resilient, strong. You have to identify all of those things. So, and I said this with a client last week, and I won't break it fully down because I'm working on some things to try to promote it a little bit more. But addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And I
Mhm.
say go back to the basics of mathematics in the order of operation, right? If you think about what you're adding into your life, you're going to begin to subtract some things that don't add to your life. Ultimately, you will multiply the things that you're wanting to have and be fruitful.
Mm.
And then later on, if you're successful, you can divide that amongst your progeny. So that's something I'm going to be working on in terms of how to explain that and express that a little bit more. But if you think about the order of operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, that is the objective. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Frantz Fanon gave us 3 questions. And I ask these quite often. And I've used this material in every aspect of my teaching. Who are you? Right? Am I who I say I am? That's for you. Am I all I ought to be? All right. Who are you is a question of identity and how you see yourself. Am I all I say I am? That's a question of, are you progressing? Are you moving in the direction? And who I say I am, are you being authentic with yourself? And am I all I ought to be? That's again a self-assessment, but you are looking at how you view where you're at today and where you saw yourself and where you see yourself.
Mm.
Now, we try not to move down the mountain, but we recognize that you alone can offer some level of insight into how you see yourself and where you're going and what type of progress. So when we think about resilience, it is your mind not looking down, going back to the mountain. All right. Don't look down. There's nothing down there. You've come from that direction. You recognize this life is peaks and valleys. But if you're always looking up and up forward, ad astra per aspera, if you're always looking high, you know, to the mountains from which we come, then you're having that level of high achievement. And so the goal, and I'll share this a little bit, thinking about who am I all I ought to be, and am I who I say I am? These 3 critical questions help to gain self-awareness.
Okay.
Next slide, please, Nicole.
Mhm.
Thank you. So if you haven't confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. Where did this quote originate from? Who brought this quote to us? I'd love to ring some bells. Nicole, are you familiar with this one?
I am not.
Okay. Anyone in your audience?
I can't see them. They
Okay.
probably are
Oh,
commenting, but I
ah,
can't see them.
yeah,
Hold on, let me see if I
yeah,
can.
that's okay. And so this quote is by Marcus Garvey. It's on your screen right there.
Oh,
All
somebody
right.
said Invictus.
No, it's Marcus Garvey.
Okay.
Hmm. And so
Cool.
that line from Bob Marley's
Mm-hmm.
song, Marcus Garvey.
What? That was Garvey?
That's Garvey.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Click the button there. So for those who said Marcus Garvey, you get a great hand. All right. So the question that comes up, if you hit it one more time, Nicole. So my question to you all is, what three words stand out in this quote? And so I won't delay it, but click it one time, and then those words will pop up for us,
Oh,
which are
self and you.
self-awareness.
Mm.
So if you haven't confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you start. So,
Hmm.
self awareness. So, if we're thinking about how to become more resilient, it begins with understanding yourself, how you've come to be, how do you move today, which is authentic or congruent with how you see yourself, and giving yourself an honest assessment.
Hmm.
That is what Garvey is trying to explain to us in that. And obviously, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Right? Next slide, please.
Hmm.
So, one more. So, if you think about it from this perspective here, and as a mental health provider and psychologist, I am trained to help people break psychological bondage. And how that is done is by elevating the understanding of the self and the ability to heal oneself.
Hmm.
Self-awareness equals emotional intelligence equals confidence equals elite performance. That's the formula.
That's the formula.
That's the formula. Next slide, please.
Hmm.
So for those of us who are wanting to improve in being able to access those things, I've got a few pointers before we conclude here. So it's going to require a mastery type of thinking. How do you master the self, right? But also, how do you master the physical, the mental, the emotional, and intuitional, spiritual self? So it's deeper than just, I'm going to work on mastery. So it's like, where do I start? Well, again, going back to, what are you reading? What are you feeding your soul? What are you feeding your body? You know, what type of relationships do you have? Are those healthy? It really begins to understand the self. For you to be able to manage some of the things that come at you in life, it is truly holistic. So think about it from that perspective. And if you go to the next slide here,
Okay.
what I would invite you all to do is continue to think about, how do you create an affirming personal value system, right? Your personal values should acknowledge in and help you understand your strengths and weaknesses, because those are the things you're going to work to maintain and work to develop. Create an affirming excuse me, create and affirm your goals, right? That's the best part of it. Your goals in life, you want to be very creative in life. It's called manifestation for some, but
Hmm.
this is your ability to define where you're going and how you're going to get there. And so I want to encourage you all to continue to do that as you improve your Black resilience. Remaining flexible yet focused. You have to be flexible in life. A friend of mine told me years ago, the road to success is always under construction. And
Hmm.
when he told me that, I'm like, And I was like 19 years old. But the point he made then is true, and so true today, right? And so when we really think about that, you have to be flexible, but maintain focus, and we could think about that a little bit more. Be diligent, right? Be bold, and be persistent. And so when we think about, I've got this thing I've been thinking about lately, and that is fear and persistence, and
Hmm.
how they challenge one another. You have to learn to defeat fear, and that is by being bold, by being authentic, by being diligent, and persistent on the other end. And then meditate and develop your intuition. And so this is a spiritual practice, or a mindfulness practice, or Zen practice, whatever you want to call it. But
Hmm.
really being able to get in touch with, your thoughts, your mind, your body, all of those things, for many of us, is quite foreign. And so when we begin to do that deep work, or I said deep thought, that's the same thing. We're really hoping to heal from within. And next slide, please. um, examining your fears and motivation, which is what I just alluded to. And so there's this old uh, way of looking at life about what you feed. And if you're feeding fear daily, or if you're attached to fear daily, that's going to win. But if you're waking up in the morning listening to an empowerment podcast, you're all here now listening to Nicole and her broadcast, and all of this is about empowering you. And if you manifest this type of energy in every aspect of your life, you're going to win more than you're going to lose. Losing is relative because that's an opportunity to learn more about yourself. But my point simply is your mentality is going to ultimately be more resilient. And so that's the way I really want you thinking about it. Which one you feed, fear or motivation, is going to win more times than not. And then when we think about it, I want you to think about how do you eliminate the word never. So ask yourself honestly, how often do you use the word never in a day?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Lot.
eliminate it. Just eliminate it. You know? And then evaluate your thoughts and dreams. Again, this is some of that deep work. This is some of the stuff I really want you to encourage you to invest in is evaluating your thoughts and your dreams. And so that may take some additional education, some teaching, some training, but this is when you begin to kind of understand your own intuition. It's
Mm-hmm.
not deja vu, and it's definitely not voodoo.
Hmm.
It's your own African intuition. So embrace it. Don't be afraid of those things. Lastly, become a problem solver and be adaptive to sudden change. Remember, we talked about being flexible, but really thinking about how do I become a problem solver? So if you think about the word can't, it's a powerful word, and you hear maybe third graders say it quite often. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. 5 year olds. I can't. I can't. And I'm one of those individuals where that's one of the dirty words that I hate
Hmm.
with an H and two eights.
Okay.
So that part right there, you have to learn to not only eliminate never, but also become a problem solver and eliminate the word can't. So really, honestly, that's my last slide. And the next slide simply is just a lovely uh, conclusion. But I really appreciate the opportunity just to kind of share those with you all. But now I want to get into some conversation and see if we can let's kind of break this out.
All right. Very good. Nice. All right. Wonderful. So, what did you all think of that? Before you answer that question, let me go back. We had some comments on Black resiliency. So, Lynette said an innate gifting or an inheritance. When COVID first occurred, we had to take classes on resiliency. I was thinking I could have taught the class, right?
Mm,
I understand that. Discernment,
mm,
evictus, I think she was responding to those words.
mm.
She said, when I took the emotional intelligence assessment online, I scored high in self awareness but low in self management. What does this mean? Good question. I'm not familiar with that
Mm, mm.
assessment.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that assessment. When you think about self management, is how do you regulate? So self awareness, you may be aware, but it's what's the follow through.
Mm,
How are you tending to the things that come up? And so if you're sitting there, you're meditating, and you are aware that you're doing a little bit more shallow breathing, you have to regulate that. You have to begin to go into deep breathing. And then when you find yourself in meditation, I'm using that example, wandering off and thinking about bills and thinking about other things, grocery shopping, how do you come back to your center, come back to your grounding? And so it's how quickly can you do that? And that's the part about being flexible. You have to be okay with your mind wanders here and then okay with bringing it back to center. And so it's what's the follow through and how well are you well trained in being flexible in that way.
okay, great points. Shout out to Shayla, Ozzy, and E for being on. Thank y'all. So you shared a lot, but definitely what I would consider the dimensions of wellness: physical, mental, emotional, um, intellectual, spiritual. Um, I think we should dive in a little bit as relates to, how those components. the contributions that they make towards our resiliency.
Yeah, absolutely. It you understand, and I try not to go too deep, but our concept, what's in us is wholeness, right? And when we understand we're connected, so we
Mm-hmm.
think about just from a tertiary claim of mind and body,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the mind and the body are connected and they're one. And so one of the things, if you think about cancer, for many of us, that's the nail in the coffin, or that is the diagnosis, and none of us want. But we often have to think about, okay, how do you heal, and how do you continue to experience the joys of life? And one of the ways that they have studied and they have shown that there's a slow progression in cancer is through comedy, laughter.
Mm.
Right? So when we think about the body now, excuse me, the mind healing the body, it's totally possible. So this is the great book called from Joe Dispenza, The Placebo Effect. And that book talks about ways that the mind has actually healed the body. So we have to acknowledge that part, that we're so multi-layered, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not just, this person gets up in the morning, puts on clothes. On the inside, we're something different. So if you think about, let's just go back to COVID, right? The interesting thing about COVID is we're walking around looking like healthy people, but inside there is something that's tearing us apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be day one, day two, and day three, even before you show symptoms of having this virus, right? I don't even know if it's a virus. I don't even really know what you want to call it, but what I do know is something on the inside does not match what's on the outside, right?
Right.
And so this is the part where, when we understand mind, body, soul, and spirit, and how those things interact, now we have to feed and heal and cultivate all those areas, you know? And so it begins with, what are you reading? What are you watching?
Mm-hmm.
What are you eating? And if all of those things on the same wavelength, then we're doing some good stuff. Ultimately, if you can clear the mind from, let's just call it intellectual clutter, then we can continue to build stronger and stronger connection between the mind and body.
Okay. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I see you, Vanity. Thanks for being on here. Lynette said, yes, Joe's work is amazing and simple to understand.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, indeed.
Okay. Cool. All right. So we got Lawrence on. Thank you for being here. And Dr. V's revolution will not be pesticides.
No,
Okay. Hmm. I like that name.
shout out to Dr. V.
Dr. V.
Yeah, he does his own gardening. He's
Okay.
got some great stuff down there.
Gotcha. 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 Gotcha.
Mm.
So I wanted us also to, we've been hearing about a lot about resilience, and you
Mhm.
know, unlike any ever before, I think the only people that I've kind of prior to 2020 heard of being resilient were children. You would especially hear that when maybe their parents got divorced, or they were in some type of accident or hurt themselves or what have you.
Mhm.
Children are resilient, but had never really heard of resiliency attached to Black folks until George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, um, and that whole summer with all of the things. So I just I'm rambling a little bit, but what I'm
Mhm.
trying to get to is just how we have been able to be resilient here as Black folks in America. I had the great opportunity of attending the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington D.C. for
Mhm.
their grand opening in 2016,
Mhm.
and I will tell you, I never felt more like I belonged in this country than when I visited that space.
Hmm.
Um, it affirmed my presence, my existence in America, unlike any other time in my life.
Okay.
And to see what my ancestors, your ancestors, our ancestors went through to endure,
Mm-hmm.
and to recognize that we stand on their shoulders, the
Mm-hmm.
ones that survived,
Right.
and the trauma, the terrorism that they had to go through for us to be here.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. I mean, just to see the stories and hear the stories, and
Mm-hmm.
you know the we just made something out of nothing. We had nothing,
Of course.
and we made something out of it. So to me, that is the epitome of resilience.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's really powerful to think about, in terms of resilience. But I would ask you to consider the museum in Waltersboro, if I'm not mistaken, South Carolina. It's a
Okay.
slave relic museum. It's a small museum, and when you pull
Mhm.
up in South Carolina, it's hot, right? Um, but I want you to think about journeying there and seeing that place.
Okay, I'll put
And
it on my
it's
list.
not glamorous at all. There's no hubbub or grandstanding. It's owned by a family,
Hmm.
and they're going to take you, on a former plantation and show you actual beds, actual tools, and actual um, other things that were common in that situation.
Hmm.
And nothing tells me that we're more resilient than what we actually survived in that way.
Amen.
Which I like the museum in Washington D.C. to a certain extent. Um, and I'm gonna get to what I mean to say. The first floor, obviously, you see the names of the slave ships,
Yeah.
and for a lot of people, they just no, 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 no. I want you to listen and read those names. Now, the one thing for me, and your listeners or you, I'd love to hear your impressions. It's like it's so many names, right?
There are.
Do, do you remember the name of the very first slave ship?
I do not.
See if anyone in your audience. I'd love for them to comment. This
Okay.
is probably going to be controversial, but I love to hear their comment.
So let me just pause right here. So for those of you who may be just tuning in, I'm on with Dr. Keino Miller. It is Wellness Wednesday, and we are talking about Black resilience. Black
Uh,
resilience. We've had a whole slide presentation. Okay, Dr. Miller came ready for y'all tonight. But we have been talking around Black resilience, and right now we're specifically talking about the museum in DC.
mm, mm-hmm,
And on the bottom floor, which is indicative of
mm.
the belly of the slave ship.
We're
For
not there
those
yet.
of you who have not been, but that's what that bottom floor represents,
Uh-huh.
the
Okay.
belly of the slave ship. And so he's asking if you all know, those of you who have visited, know what the name of the first slave ship was. So we got a few
Yeah.
takers. All
Yeah.
right.
If you take us and through the magic of Google, you can get the answer.
Of
So
course, right. So he said the Magna Carta,
yeah,
and Lynette said one was Juno.
well, it's really fascinating, and I want your listeners to think about it. It was the good ship Jesus.
Really
Mhm.
interesting.
And so when you watch and you go through that exhibit and you get to see all of the religious connotations
Hmm.
of taking people from a place that they said we had no souls.
Mm.
And for that reason, that's how they negotiated with the Pope to sanction enslavement. These people have no souls. Even though African kings said, hey, we're willing to convert, we can do some business, they still stole the people from the land,
Mm.
but we have no souls. Therefore, we can be transported through Jesus and Christ Rock and everything else to this West, right?
Yeah. Yes, Dr. V, it was Jesus.
Yeah. So look at the things we hold on to, right?
Mm-hmm.
You all celebrate December the 25th as Christmas, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did our ancestors celebrate?
Now that I don't know.
Winter solstice.
Winter solstice. Okay.
And what did our great great ancestors celebrate? Asar setting Heru, the coming of the sun, Heru. And
Mm.
so here's what I'm saying. When you pick up this book, when I would ask you, what are you reading? You begin to understand empowerment. So when you talk about George Floyd, you talk about us existing in a society that has welcomed us to a certain degree through Jim Crow, right? Through chattel slavery, through systematic oppression. And here we are in 2022, still dealing with some of the same challenges we were dealing with in 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Interesting.
And so,
Okay.
what are you reading?
So
What is
somebody,
breaking the bondage of that enslavement? Because we're still tied to the land, and we're still tied to the thought process of we don't have a home. So emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
none but ourselves can free our minds. Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. I'm kind of, my wheels are turning. So you all help me out. I'm a little bit in, just kind of thinking about all this, trying to process this. And so
Mm,
my thoughts. Let's go back to who am I?
mm.
Who am I? And who am I? Who I say I am?
Yeah, I'm all I ought to be.
Mm-hmm. Am I
So
all I?
Fanon asked these questions because you have to look in the mirror, and it's not about just the physical,
Mm-hmm.
right? We call it resilient after George Floyd. We're so resilient. It's like the narrative of the strong black woman. That's a paradox.
Yeah.
In spite of. But when I look and I talk and I do my research, you know who has the highest mortality rate of any group of people in this country?
Highest mortality.
We die early, die first.
I would say black men.
There you go.
Yeah.
Strong black men. So think about John Henry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about this often because, yes, I can beat a locomotive. What happened after John Henry beat the locomotive
He died.
or the steam engine? I'm sorry.
Right.
He died.
Right.
So who am I? Am I just go to work? I just take care of my kids? Or am I the custodian of a legacy? Do I maintain knowledge and pass that knowledge forward? Do I maintain my own health and well-being so that I can be the man, woman, son, daughter that my ancestors called me to be, to pass on the legacy?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's, in some regards, and hey Tina, thanks for being here. I think in many regards there's a disconnect because of maybe our biological family. Knowledge of that legacy may be absent. I'm not gonna say it's lost because it exists, but it may be absent. Yeah. And so then you ask the questions around what are we reading? Right. So that even if that there's not a knowledge of what your actual family legacy is, we could consider ourselves an extension of other Black and brown folks, right? Right.
Good.
Through the books that we read, through the articles that we read, right? Other melanated peoples, and so That's the connection, right?
Ultimately, if something is pouring into you, then that's a positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Do you have a favorite television show?
Not really. Unsung on TV1.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. A
Yeah.
lot of great information about a lot of different groups, right?
Yep.
Right. When you were watching Unsung, and this is for the audience as well, but we're having a conversation. How did you feel learning about maybe one of your favorite groups, learning about maybe some of the challenges, trials, and tribulations they had to overcome or endure?
It was intriguing. It humanized them to me.
Mhm.
Made them more of just a regular person, like
Mhm.
me, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the thing about it. So that show
Mm-hmm.
brought us closer to maybe our heroes, but also closer to, hey, you know what? I can really do some great things too. And so this is something that's going to empower me.
Yes.
But, you know, I think of it in this way here. There's a book, I can't think of the author, but The Lies My Teacher Told Me is the name of the book. I got it when I graduated college. And one of my professors actually told me that, gave me the book. Lies My Teacher Told Me. We have to seek knowledge. And obviously, we know when we think about disconnect, typically your first teaching happens in the home, and your mother is typically your first teacher. So imagine when you are trying to navigate, first and second and third grade, and you have a blatant misunderstanding of following the rules. Well, imagine if you don't receive discipline, or if you're never trained in a way that was appropriate in this society, in this context, right? So if they just let you all walk out the house, what thing happened when you go to school?
Hey, Nick, it's gonna be a problem.
It's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
You're a representative of your home, right? And so they're going, what's the teacher or the counselor? They're gonna be like, what's happening at home?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we have to get our house in order, right? And so this is where we exist, in the United States of America, a nation that we built with our labor. And now we have to find a way to get comfortable here and be our best and authentic self.
Hmm. Real quick, thank you, Tina, for putting up the name of the book and the author.
Well, thank you.
So that's just it, right?
Hmm.
You got the boy talking about double consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a a mask that we wear. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I guess modern day they call it code switching.
Mm-hmm. Black skin, white mask.
All right, right. So when do we get to the place where we don't have the code switch, where we don't have to wear this mask?
We've not created that place yet because we're not comfortable with who we are authentically. When we become authentically who we are, we create enclaves, right? You have some great enclaves in places where we feel more comfortable. That's why Atlanta's population has grown like that. You have successful Black business doing business with one another, and you have people who want to be in a space like that,
Hmm.
right? We exist in enclaves where that level of consciousness and that level of appreciation of one's identity and Black resilience thrives. You know,
Hmm.
I submit to you that densely populated Atlanta, Washington, D.C., densely populated, and those are the two most populous places of Black people, Black thought, Black intellect, Black aspiration, high achievement.
Hmm.
So think about it. Who are you connected with? How do you
Hmm.
create these communities in virtual spaces and take that out and then build a community? It can be done, but it has to be very intentional, right? So it moves from the intuition to the collective to the intentional.
All right. You
So
said
that's not meant to be esoteric. That's just simply mean to be, how do we take these great conversations? How do we create places where we can thrive economically, culturally, socially, and then heal? Because that's the goal.
so. You said intuition, intellectual, and intentional.
Did I say that? Ooh, that's a T-shirt.
I think
Yeah,
that's.
I think that's what I said when I, sometimes when I talk, I
I'll have
just
to play a replay.
that was great. But that's the thing about it. Your intuition, your high self, your consciousness, it recognizes what's real and what's authentic, what feels good, and what feels real. Those are the places and spaces we come back to.
Okay. So, how can we continue um, to promote, perpetuate Black resilience?
Question. You know, I'd love to hear the audience have some thought about it.
All right. So, y'all, if you will, in the comments, as we are getting ready to wrap up shortly, but just let us know, how do you think we can continue to promote, engage in Black resilience, either in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our worship centers, on our jobs, in our places of higher learning?
Mm-hmm.
How can we promote Black resilience? Let us know in the
Let us
comments.
know. Now, I'll share my thoughts. I
Okay.
think ultimately, Nicole, be comfortable with learning knowledge that seems different, that seems new. Be comfortable with experimenting with, um, your thinking. Sometimes it's going deeper than just philosophy. Sometimes it's going deeper than just the ideology of your parents and grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and honestly, learning to understand your oppressor and learning to understand their thoughts and their philosophies,
Yeah.
right? And understanding, we talked about fear earlier. You don't have to live in fear, but I would love for you to understand fear is a very powerful motivator.
It is.
Very powerful.
I don't understand. We talked about beer earlier.
And
It
this
is.
is why I don't like Apple. So my watch listens to me. And then you hear this dude and this technology, come on, man.
Oh
It's
gosh.
asking me. But
All
anyway,
right. It's
so
okay.
my point is simply, you have to be comfortable with going to places within your mind that may be challenging to your preconceived notions of health and well-being, and then just sit and meditate and breathe and relax. And I would ask you, and everyone is different,
Mm-hmm.
but get to the water.
Get to the water.
Get to the water and just experience that, being in that place, listening to the sounds, connecting with through your five senses to that place right there. Get grounded. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you like it or not, you are being grounded when you're at the water side, or
Okay.
at the riverside.
Down by the riverside, huh?
Yeah, that's why that song is made.
Uh-huh.
It's appropriate.
So you're not gonna study won't no more.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah,
Hey,
but ultimately, you find out what moves you, what heals you, and that is important when you're listening to yourself.
indeed. All right. She said, I love the water. Lynette, get to the water. Yes. Um, Tina, yes. All right. Jayana said, or walk in
In
nature.
nature,
So
absolutely.
definitely connected with nature for sure. All right. Answering our question from earlier, research and teach the younger generations about the true past. So we asked, how can we perpetuate, promote Black resilience? So
Mm.
that was her response to that question. Lynette said, I think we promote Black resilience by knowing who we are
Mhm.
and stay curious.
Stay curious.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It was a full moon last night.
It's full in the night too.
There we go. So, question for the everyone: do anything special?
No, we don't
All you
know.
have to,
We don't
all
know
you have,
about that.
all you have to do is light a candle, say some prayers.
Yeah,
It only starts there.
and we
And
don't
I
know about
understand
that.
you say, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. Okay. All
No,
right.
we don't know about that though. That's what I'm saying. That
I got
those
you.
practices are rarely getting passed down in our families and in our communities, even if it's not our biological.
I got you.
Yeah.
So in the few minutes we got, I'll share up it. Get early in the morning, watch that moon, and just take that moment. All right. Understanding history. Absolutely. So brought some books. Um, so this is a really good one here.
Okay. Hold on. Let me get you on regular screen. There you go.
Mhm.
All right.
Shifting your paradigm right here. You Shaka Craig. That's a good one there. Just to kind of understand some things.
What's the title of Shifting what?
Shifting your paradigm
Okay.
for optimal health and longevity. Uh, Dr. Akbar, of course, Know Thyself.
Mm,
That's a classic. Uh, Self Healing Power and Theory, Old Teachings from Africa. This is a really good one in terms of just healing and starting some of the practices of healing,
mhm.
being comfortable. Very easy read, too, but very good and very powerful book. Um,
Bye.
and that's all I'll share for right now. And for young black men, if you all want to get a book for a young black man, this is a great one. I teach from this Asafo. This is Brother Mwalimuke Bumani Baruti. He's up in Atlanta. Great book though. Asafo, a warrior's guide to manhood. I
Okay.
would argue probably the only book you need if you got a young son. Just a
Very
few.
good.
Just a few.
All right. So Lynette said, "What was the person in white on the side with birds?" I think that might have been the first one.
Yeah. Um, that was a spiritual healer.
Okay. Spiritual healer, he said.
Mhm.
All right.
wearing
Yeah.
wearing the uh wearing the accoutrement of a batala.
Okay. So Lynette wants to know, can I share the reading list? Yes, we will share the reading list.
Of course.
Not a problem. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our time, but I would like to give you final words, Dr. Miller, as we prepare to close out. And if
Oh,
you want folks to connect with you, let us know how they can do that as well. And anything, activities, events,
of course.
products, services, or what have you that you could have coming up or that you want to make people aware of.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a licensed psychologist again here in Florida and in Louisiana. I'm currently in Florida and back and forth between the two states. My email address is dr.dr. Keino Miller, Keinomiller at gmail.com. Website is just drkeinomiller.com. And feel free to call me if I can be of help or assistance. I'll try to help where I can. 504-656-6531. And, as we talk about some of this stuff, tis the season. Um, how do we promote resilience?
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things that are spinning in my head. But what I will tell you is this, around this time of year, our ancestors, this was something that they looked forward to because time in those spaces and places, it was a little lax. And this is the time of year many of them escape plantations.
Hmm.
So while people were full of revelry and
Hmm.
joy and alcohol, Harriet Tubman took her sojourn. Some would say north, but also I would argue she came south.
Mm.
Many of our ancestors made their way down to Florida, and who are what are known as the Cimarrons,
Mm.
right? Not Seminoles, but we could talk about that in another conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Our ancestors took this land, and they were resilient, and they fought to have a peace, and they fought again, and they continued to win until the United States government said, "You know what? You all are tough. Why don't y'all go to Oklahoma? Y'all got to go." And so, from that perspective, all I'm saying is we can recapture our humanity, our intellectual thought, and our mind-body connection to spirit. Part of it begins with connecting with one another, and then connecting with information that elevates the mind and the body and the spirit. So I'm humble. Thank you again for welcoming, Nicole. I know this is a lot of information. It's so much deeper than sports psychology. Like I said, I'm a black psychologist masquerading as a sports psychologist, but I do it because that's where a lot of our young people are in sport. And so
Absolutely.
this is the knowledge that I hold and I share, and I do it with joy. So thank you for welcoming me.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Our pleasure. Thank you for again joining us and sharing, some things that we can carry with us. I especially hope that the three questions, those really stood out to me. Who am I? Am I who I say I am? And am I all I ought to be? Am I all I ought to be? So we need to spend some time with those questions. Really, really contemplate those, meditate on them, pray about them, and really be able to answer those questions.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And feel free to, like I said, if anyone needs to reach out or have a question, I could try to, do whatever I can do to kind of help them, connect with a provider, or, find another path that, that may elevate them. So
Absolutely.
I'm available.
Well, for those of you who may be new to the platform, I'm going to invite you to subscribe to Conversations with Nicole on YouTube. Subscribing is supporting, and we need all the support we can get. We are actually running a contest for the month of December. We are asking folks to play one video, a minimum of one video per day on a YouTube channel. And the person with the most views and comments will get a Conversations with Nicole swag bag. Not telling you what's in it, but it'll be some great stuff. So, entire month of December, we are on December 7th, so you have several days left to be a part of this contest. And so, please share this. Let's keep this conversation going as relates to Black resilience. Tag a friend, a loved one, and let's share this information. Again, Dr. Miller, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll have you come back and some of these topics that we just brazed, right? It was just the surface. You can come back and do a little deeper something on some of those. All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to bring my partner, Dr. V, great scholar. And, I'm sure we can have an enjoyable conversation. But this was fun. I hope it was fun for the audience.
Yeah, I believe so. Let's see. Tiffany said, absolutely wonderful, very well spoken and explained. So, yes, Tiffany approves. We all approve. So, all right, good people, you all be safe. Have a great rest of the week, great weekend, and we will see y'all next week. Peace.